Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
And welcome to another great episode of Foxborough Central. I am Bob Hickey, your host. Happy to be with you today as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough truly the gem of Norfolk County. I am joined today by a guest who I honestly will say I never thought I would ever meet, not because I don't like meeting people, because I didn't even know one existed. I'm joined by the Reverend Jerry Hogan, who is the National Circus Chaplain.
Great.
Amazing.
Nice to meet you, Bob. How you doing?
Did I get all that right?
Yeah, you covered a lot. Yeah.
Father Hogan, it's a pleasure having you with us here in Foxborough, and I guess I'll start off by letting everybody know that if you're watching this, then you're obviously a fan of local cable, but you also must be a fan of fun. And I cannot imagine anything more fun than me spending all my time dealing with circuses. And you have an avocation, and you've merged your ministry with circus performing.
Yeah, it's kind of unique, and many people ask
kind of unique.
When people say,
unique.
I'm the circus chaplain, they don't catch it right away, and they can't put two and two together. They got circus, religion, and this doesn't jive in their memory bank too well. But I've been privileged to be the circus chaplain appointed by the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops. I'll be 21 years this coming March. And I have been the fifth priest since 1928. We've had a presence on the circuses. Basically, I started with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey back in 28 when it moved from Bridgeport, Connecticut to Sarasota, Florida. And at that time, St. Martha's Catholic Church became the first church. It was a missionary church from Tampa. And Monsignor Alcelander used to come down on a buggy and say Mass, and they built a church. And from 1928 until now, St. Martha's is the National Circus Church. So when I do all my ministry on the road, I record my records there. So Monsignor Alcelander was in the movie The Greatest Show on Earth. It won the Academy Award back in 1954. And if you notice that, there's a priest there blessing the train, and it's Monsignor Alcelander with 7 altar boys. Some of them are still living in St. Martha's. And from that time on, Ringling Brothers began to expand and invite the Catholic priests into the work, and we've broadened that base now. And since I've been involved for 21 years, I'm exposed myself to all circuses in the United States. And technically, I am the pastor for every Catholic and every circus in the United States of America, which is about 3,000 people.
That is amazing. And I suppose that at a basic level, it makes sense because circus performing is, by its very nature, you're never located in one place. It's an itinerant move. And so, to have, I won't say the foresight, but to have the need identified and met, that makes sense. It really does.
Yeah. We work on the people on the move, the migrant farm workers. But we've expanded our circus ministry called Circus and Traveling Show Ministry. So we take care of the carnivals, the race car ministry. People that work for NASCAR. We have a priest, and we have a priest that does the Indy cars. And we have 2 priests who take care of the professional bull riders, because they're all Catholic. They're all from Argentina. So in the circus ministry, and I have a lot of people who help me. It's just not myself. I'm appointed the chaplain, but I have some other priests who volunteer and who work in the country, some retired, who come out and help. And I also have some sisters who travel, and they work in the ministry. Used to have 4, now 2 of them are little sisters of Jesus, retired, and I have 2 other sisters from the missionary Sisters of the Sacred Heart of Jesus out of Reading, Pennsylvania. They were missionary sisters in Papua New Guinea, and 14 years ago they joined and they started working Ringlings, and they had regular jobs. They were Teamsters. They're the only 2 Teamster sisters I know in the world. And they were on the union. And one pulled the curtain and one was in wardrobe. And they're fascinating people. And then Sister Dorothy, who was pulling the curtain, ended up teaching. That was her real vocation. And Sister Bernard was the mother of all the girls in the wardrobe department. And they did that for a number of years on a number of shows, about 7 years on Ringling. And now we've expanded that ministry. They've changed. They're still working, but now we pay for them. We raise money for their ministry, and they go out and they go on a circus for 3 months and do catechetical work and train people to do religious education on different shows. So
who knew all this was
going
on?
I know, it's amazing. And And I go around and visit all the shows and travel quite a bit. And,
As a customer and as a fan, I suppose it is an oversight, or at least not a realization on many of our parts, that performers do have lives, and they're raising families, and they do all the things that you and I do at home, except they do it in front of us as they perform, and they do it from town to town. And so it is, I don't want to keep saying it makes sense, but it certainly does make absolute sense that there is a need. And it's fascinating that you're able to meet this on a national basis.
Yeah, it's challenging because you're all over the place quite a bit, visiting different shows. Ringling Brothers has 3 units now. They have 2 that travel by train, the red and the blue. And each train has 54 cars. It's over a mile long. And then the gold show is a small one-ring show that travels by bus and truck. So they put the show together for 2 years. Now the blue show was in Boston October. They wound up their season the second week in November in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And they went into the rehearsals. So they've been rehearsing since the week before Thanksgiving. And I'm flying down there to join them on Friday. We have a preview, and we open January 1st in Tampa. So I was down there for 4 days in early December to watch rehearsals. Matter of fact, the Gold Show was rehearsing at the same time. They're a one-ring show. They open up Wednesday, Christmas Day in West Palm Beach. So they're putting the whole show together, a whole new show.
Okay.
So they bring people from all over the world. It's like the United Nations. You speak 7 or 8 languages. So they have to, when they get ready to do the spec, that's the big parade and all that, they have 7 translators. So the director will say, okay, I want everyone to move to the left. And then it's translated into Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Hungarian, Japanese, Chinese. And it's amazing. It's to see them all do that. And it's kind of exciting. So this is an exciting time of the year because the shows are coming together. And after you perform for the 2 years, you might get a contract to extend, or you might have to go to another show, maybe in Europe or any other place. So the blue show is beginning. The red show just wound down its first year tour, and they're on vacation now, and they open up January 5th in Miami.
Okay.
And so they travel the whole country. And then you have all the small tented shows that travel the country. And we call them the mud shows. And if you're on one of those shows in pouring rain, you know why they call it a mud show. I traveled with the Cullen Miller Circus once for 21 days when I became the chaplain 20 years ago. And I had my own Winnebago. And the second day I was there, it came down pouring rain. And someone had to hand me some boots to get out. And my Winnebago got stuck, and the elephants had to pull it out.
Wow.
And it was like, oh my God, what am I into here? It was a whole different experience. So you see those shows come around here. Like Kelly Miller plays this area, the Cole Brothers.
Cole Brothers,
that's
Clyde,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm visiting them too. And they're all on hiatus now. And most of them live in the Sarasota area, and they start about March.
Okay.
Traditionally, the tented shows go from second week in March to around just before Thanksgiving.
The little town I grew up in, we always looked forward to the Clyde Cole Brothers coming, and I can say that I understand the term mud show a little bit just from a consumer standpoint.
That's right.
It was always, particularly after the 4th or 5th show. So as I'm sitting here talking again, I'm talking to Father Jerry Hogan, who is the national circus priest, and I get a sense that he just really likes circuses. This is not something that Cardinal whomever just pointed at you one day and everybody else took a step back and you were the volunteer who didn't put his finger on his nose. I get a sense that you enjoy working with these performers.
Yeah, I love the circus. I love my priesthood and I love the circus. What happened was, when I was a kid, back in 1954, my father took me to the Ringling Brothers Circus. I came home, started talking to my neighbor who had worked with Ringlings.
Okay.
He had worked with the horses. So it would be like having a retired baseball player as your neighbor. So he started telling me all about the ins and outs. He'd bring me books. He would bring me to different shows, the small bonded shows. The Hunt Brothers Circus used to come to Woburn every year. That's my hometown, Woburn, Massachusetts. So I started to get a love for it that way. And then he introduced me to Father Ed Sullivan, a priest from Boston, who was then the circus chaplain.
Okay.
Now, I met Father Ed at the Hunt Brothers Circus. I have a picture of myself and Father Ed when I was 16 years old. Little did I know that I was going to be a priest. Little did I know I was going to fall in his footsteps. as I say, I didn't go looking for this gig. I mean, this is God working.
I was going to say, it is a true
mysterious
calling,
ways.
yes.
I know, it absolutely is. So when I was got older and in the seminary, I liked the circus, so I'd go and I'd take people, and I know a little more. I knew who Gunther Gable Williams was and all the ins and outs because I'd read about it. And, so then, back in 1990, I joined an organization called Circus Fans of America. And there's all these crazy people like myself who love the circus. All walks of life. Went to the national convention in Milwaukee. It was in conjunction with the Great Circus Parade, which they used to have in second week in July in Milwaukee. And got to know all these other people, and they said, "Do you know Father Jack Toner?" I said, "No." "Well, he's with Ringling Brothers. You got to meet him." So the following spring, I hooked up with Jack. Well, I had written to him back and forth. We started corresponding. And that year, when the Ringling Brothers coming to Boston in October, I said, "I'd like to meet you, Father Jack." And he said, "I won't be with the unit, but here's the card of the performance director. You could say Mass for them." I said, "Oh, never thought of that." So I walked in, introduced myself, and the first thing the performance director said was, "Oh, Father Jack said you were coming. Love to have you say Mass." I said, "Oh, okay." So at that time, they played Boston for 2 weeks, the old garden. And so I went in 2 weeks and I said Mass for them. And I was watching the show, and then they'd all come up to me for Mass for communion, and half of them were in costume, the clowns were still in makeup, and I'd be giving communion. "Oh, that guy was on the wire. Oh, that guy was on trapeze. Oh, that woman, she rides elephants." I said, "Oh my God." And that was my introduction. So then the following spring, I was down in Providence and met Jack, and he said to me, "You ever think of doing this work?" I said, "Well, what do you do?" I had happened to be a college chaplain at the time. I was at UMass Boston in Emmanuel College.
Really? Okay.
I lived in South Boston. So college work and circus ministry are very similar. Ministry of presence. You have to be with the people. So when I was a college chaplain, you have to walk around, visit them, see what they're doing. You have to hang around in the lounges. I got to watch more Days of Our Lives than I ever knew because that's where they hang out. You go to the cafeteria. Well, same thing in circus ministry. You have to be with the people. Mm-hmm. So my work really begins 4 hours before the show. I'm out there visiting them, seeing what's going on. Once the show begins and the music cranks up, they're busy and I become busy. So it's a whole different atmosphere. So that time you do a lot of counseling, a lot of listening to problems, visiting what's going on. And that was very similar. So when Jack asked me about it, and I said, "Oh, you'll be doing it forever." He says, "No, I'm getting old." And that following summer, he got sick. Mm. And he gave my name to the bishops. So I didn't go looking for this. We called up and Cardinal Laura gave me permission to do it part-time. So I started the ministry and we expanded it. And it's really got grown.
Well, and before we started the interview, we were just talking about how do we fall into these opportunities. Yeah. And it seems as though you certainly became the right man for the right job. You love the people that you're working with. And and again, folks at home, I'm honored to speak with Father Jerry Hogan, who is the National Circus Priest, but he has a website that I do hope you'll log on to. It is circusrev.com, CIRCUSREV.com, circusrev.com. It's a fascinating site because, in looking at it, you just get a sense of enthusiasm for what he's doing, what you were doing. But also there's pictures and stories and history, and it's just an interesting insight, if you will, into the lives of circus performers and real people. And there's some pictures of you doing services with clowns and makeup, and so you're telling it like it is, and it's just very interesting to see that, and the families, the performing families, sure. and the little girls and the kids growing up, and I'm sure you see this.
Oh, all the time. Also, we have a former circus person who keeps our Facebook alive, so you can go to Circus and Traveling Show Ministry Facebook, and there's other stuff. It's even updated quite a bit.
Circus and Traveling Show Ministry.
So that's another one. You can find a lot of
stuff. So you can friend them on Facebook.
Yeah, friend them on Facebook, and a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah, I've been doing this for so long. I've got to marry and baptize and see a lot of people in the experiences that they want to go to church and they can't. So we have to bring the church to them. Mm-hmm. Most of the shows have 3 performances on Saturday and 2 on Sunday, and then they break up and they move to the next town. So it's really difficult. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I'm always in contact almost every day with circus people. And last Friday I got a call from Danielle Zope, and she was a Gonzalez, and I hadn't talked to her in a long time. Her husband is an illusionist and a juggler, and she used to do hula hoops and trapeze. And I married him 12 years ago, this coming Sunday. And they've been doing a lot of cruise ships. See, circus people, after a while, they work on circuses, but then they go out on the cruise ships and nightclubs. They do a lot of different stuff. And they've created quite a beautiful act. And they were excited because they just had a baby. And they've been married. They'll be married 13 years Sunday, and I'm going to baptize their first baby on Sunday, the day of the anniversary of their 13th wedding.
So let's talk about that. Congratulations, by the way. That's great. So as the National Circus Chaplain, how do you do that? I mean, you can't just helicopter up to the cruise ship.
Oh, no, no. When they're out on the cruise ship, they might have a chaplain out there doing that. But what happens is they're back here in the area. They have a house in Orlando. They had the baby in September. So what they do is they all come back to the Sarasota area for their sacrament.
So that's home base.
Sure, that's home base.
Okay.
So they were married in Englewood, in a Catholic church in Englewood. And so they usually try to track me down when they want a sacramental experience. And it usually a lot of it falls in this time of the year because they're all back in that area. So January, February, and March, I'm down there. And I'm working with all the elderly circus people who live in that area too. So that's my operations for the winter. But then they start going out. So they're calling now, and I've picked up a few weddings and another baptism on the Ringling show. So a lot of things can start picking up now. So that's what happens.
So this is the busy season, if you will.
Very busy season, yeah. I'm leaving here Friday, and I'll be back till April. And I don't know where I'll be reassigned. I could come back here. I could be any place in Boston. But this is my busy time.
Well, it is just amazing that you happen to be in Foxborough. And of course, I'll give a shout out to our board president and great volunteer, Paul Beck, who introduced me to you. And I understand you're both train aficionados.
Oh, yes. I fell in love with trains. I have circus trains in my house in Sarasota. And I had this Christmas train I had in my previous parish where I was for 17 years, St. Michael's in North Andover. 10 years ago, I started a little Christmas train around by the reception area. And people would come in, especially during Mass, when the kids were bored during Mass, and watch the Christmas train and would be singing Christmas music. Well, I called this year, and they didn't use it last year. Oh, I went up and got it. And I said, I told Paul about it, and Paul said, I'll go get some track. So we tripled the size. So at St. Mary's in Foxborough in the Murphy Room, we had this big presentation of a Christmas train with the help of Paul Beck. Yeah.
Well, hopefully those of you who were at St. Mary's, you had the chance to see it this past holiday season, because I know that it and you are both going to be leaving soon as you make your way across the country and for the next 3 months down to Sarasota, Florida to tend to your flock, if you will. Yeah. The question I have now is, what happens if there is say there's a circus performing in Nevada and there's an issue and you're called to service? Sure. How do you minister to that need?
Depends. If it's an accident, sometimes I go. I drop everything.
So you'll go?
Yeah, we've had a train wreck.
You take it seriously, the national, I don't mean,
I
don't mean it that way, but the position involves travel.
Yeah, I've had a number of tragedies in the ministry. If it's a major one and they ask for me, or sometimes I can get a priest in that area. I have priests in the West Coast, I have priests in the Midwest and stuff like that. But if I'm intimately involved with the people, I've gone. We had a number of tragedies. One, I happened to be there. We were in St. Paul, Minnesota, with the Ringling Gold Show, the small show I mentioned, where they were playing St. Paul. And I was very close to this family, the Espanias. They're very popular and very talented people. And Desi Espana was, I had just got up on the show as a Saturday, and they were getting ready to go out to do their second show. And Desi said, "You're going to say Mass for us tomorrow?" I said, "Absolutely," and we were talking about it. And she went out to perform. She was doing what we call a silk act up on the top. My husband, Yvonne, was standing beside. They do many acts on the show. And I was up in the concourse with one of the vendors. And all of a sudden we heard a scream. And the bolt broke and she landed on her head. In the circus, we have a code. When there is an accident, the orchestra switches the music to the 12th Street reg. So we know immediately something has seriously happened. It only happens if it's very serious. And the clowns are called to go forward. This show only had 3 clowns. The expression from The song "Send in the Clowns" from Sondheim's Little Night Music. Well, that's the expression, "Send in the clowns." They have to distract the audience, got to get the person out. So I immediately went down, and we got Desi off into the hospital, and 7 hours later she died. And I was there with the family. She grew up in Bulgaria. She's 34 years old, had 2 kids. I had baptized them, knew the family very intimately, very close to the whole community. But it was interesting to know, because of communications nowadays, within 4 hours we were getting calls all over the world that Desi had fallen. People had known right away. And so we had to regroup, and next day Kenneth Feld and his family came in. They're the owners of the show. What we're going to do for a funeral, the family lived in Englewood, Florida, right near Sarasota, and they want to do a funeral, but the show wanted a funeral too, so we all were moving that Sunday to Sioux City, Iowa for 2 days, from Tuesday, Wednesday. So we did the funeral in Sioux City,
That has to be the toughest, because the show must go on, as we know.
Absolutely.
And
you have to adapt to the situations, and so we all, I flew back here, changed my underwear for the next day. We had a wake after the show on Tuesday, and found the Catholic Church, and a lot of people had the day off. They flew in, we did the funeral there. Here we are in Sioux City, Iowa, all over the world coming in. And then the following week was Memorial Day weekend, so the Monday after Memorial Day weekend, we had a big funeral in the cathedral in Venice, Florida, right there. So that was a very difficult time for the whole show and the people. But we've had a number of those, and that was the one that really caught me right away off guard. But thank God I was there. But
so I suppose that brings up the thought that many of us have, and again, I go to circuses, love them, but that it is the circus performing family.
Sure.
And
6-7 generations. Now everyone's heard now of Nick Wallenda, the Wallenda family, because of his recent walks. I know the whole family. There's a generation after generation. And they all live in Sarasota. I'll be with them very shortly. I spent Easter 2 years ago with the family. Work very diligently, very religious. Some are evangelical, some are Catholic. It makes no difference. We all get along. We work we're all together. And to see all the sacrifices they do, and it's a difficult life.
Well, I was going to say, it cannot be an easy life. Performing, takes a lot just of personality, of confidence, of training. Live performance, incrementally so, or exponentially so, and then to go from town to town and never really have a sense of home community other than the circus life. We've read about it, but it is really, and I thank you again for taking the time to come out and talk to me, because I love having this insight into what the true circus life is, what a true circus family is.
They don't make much money. In the scale of entertainment, when you figure Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, or the Beatles, whatever it is, they can pull in on one arena show millions. Circus people, if they make $900 a week, that's a lot of money. Except the top people, they can make a few thousand. But they're in it not because they want to make money, in a percentage they want to survive like everyone else, but they're in it because it's a vocation.
It's what they do.
It's what they do, and the audience is so important to them, and they're willing to take that risk. Every time you see a live performance, something could go wrong. When you think of different acts, like the one, for instance, he practices all the time. And he tries to, when he's doing these outdoor events, he tries to put wind tunnels in there so he could see what the effect would be. But they're always practicing, and they start like 3 feet off the floor, and they keep on moving up. And then one of the great things are trapeze artists. Trapeze artists, my favorite act, because number one, they have to have tremendous ability. If you're a flying act and you let go and you fly off to a catcher, the catcher has to be built like a middle linebacker. Like Teddy Bruschi. I mean, you have to have a strong body to make a catch. And the flyer going in, if he's doing a triple, he's going in at 16 miles an hour. And if he's off a little, he's going to break your nose. Now, there are 9 people in the world who have done 4 somersaults, we call the quad. And they're going into the catcher at 75 miles an hour. And I've been many nights watching them. They practice after the show. So the show finishes at 10 o'clock. They start practicing.
They're practicing after the show?
10:30 to midnight. And sometimes they say, Father Jerry, come here, bust our stuff. We want you to watch the thing. So I've actually watched people make the quad in practice and never hit it in a real show. And to watch them do that, and it takes about 4 to 5 years to hit the triple, and it's amazing. Now in the new show, Tito Gaiona, one of the very famous flyers, he won the Golden Clown at the Monaco Festival. He has been brought in by Ringlings to train, and he went around the whole world to get the best flyers. And I'm sitting there a few weeks ago watching them practice. And this to me is the ultimate. It'd be like sitting there watching Big Papi hit home runs for an hour. And he's sitting there watching these. And I said, okay, yeah, Tito, where'd you get these guys? He says, well, all 5, Father, can do the triple. And the 2 girls can do the triple. I said, you got 8 people that can do the triple? Most shows have 1 person can do the triple. He says, no, they all can do the triple.
It's an all-star roster.
Yeah. And I'm sitting and saying, glory be to God, this is going to be something. I'm sitting there with my glory, me and Tito, and watching these people in this big room, It's going to be great.
Wow.
It's going to be great.
Well, you know what? As the Ringling Brothers Circus comes back to Boston every year, these are things that I'm now going to be thinking of, and when we go out. So phenomenal. We are almost out of time. I'm always going to give you the last word, but I'm going to run through your brag sheet again.
Sure.
Of course, honored to have Reverend Jerry Hogan with me here. And I think when I first was emailing with you, you could just say Google Jerry Hogan, or
sure, you can do that.
Gurgle the Circus Rev.
Circus Rev, Google that, or Circus and Traveling Show Ministry. Something will pop up.
Well, I was going to say, I did just that, and it all came up. So you're not a hard man to find, so to speak. But the ministry is strong, and the base out of Sarasota, it's St. Martha's?
St. Martha's Catholic Church in Fruitville in Sarasota. That's my name's in the bulletin every week, and I'll be there. Yeah.
And the National Circus Chaplain can also be found, and it's a great website. I do hope you get a chance to check it out at circusrev.com. Is there anything that people in America or people here in Foxborough could or should do to support your ministry?
Sure. Oh, I'd love to have you. You can send money. We all need money. As Father Fausto in St. Martha says, deep into your pockets and give me your money. He says it to the snowbirds every year. But for the sisters, their ministry, we're trying to raise money for them, because I have to go out and hustle. We have to get grants, and I go around, and the sisters go around in the summer and preach at different churches to raise money for their work, because they're not being paid by the circus. They're being paid by us, the Circus Travel Show Ministry. So any donation would be greatly appreciated to help the sisters in their work. It's not for me, it's for them.
Well, very good. And clearly this is your vocation, and I love the enthusiasm, and I can't wait to see what happens next. It's been a pleasure having you join us. And
thank you, Bob.
And for those of you who missed all that other information I gave, you can always check us out again at www.fcatv.org, where you can find this or any of the other wonderful Foxborough Central episodes. I'm so out of time, I can't even begin to tell you, so I'll just tell you this. Have a great day, Foxborough.